I grew up with the Tunisian tradition of celebrating girls and women. When we were young, we were offered jewelry and presents and clothing, and we were being complimented over and over on our beauty and our grace and femininity, and we would dress up for no other reason than celebrating our womanhood and girlhood and our femininity. And it was like a party, like for a wedding or for a hene, but it was no one's wedding. It was us, the women, the girls. We were celebrated for who we are, for who we were, for being girls, for being women, for Hashem making us women and girls. And this week, as I hosted a party and I shared the wisdom of Chag al-Banat, of Rosh Hodesh al-Banat, to a group of 30 plus American women who didn't grow up with that tradition, I felt even more connected to my ancestors. And I felt grateful that growing up, they instilled in me that my beauty was a strength, that my womanhood was my force, and that through those tools, through the design that Hashem put inside my body and my genetics and all that makes me a woman, a Jewish woman, I will find the courage to fight against the oppression.
Ayuni is a term of endearment passed from grandmother to granddaughter. These are the stories of our Middle Eastern and North African Jewish grandmothers. Hi, I'm Drora Rusi, an American-born Hungarian Jew married to an Israeli-born Yemenite Jew.
Hi, I'm Dalia Arusi Tiveroli, and my kids are represented by 4 communities: Yemen, Ashkenaz, Libya, and Italy.
Hi, I'm Sarah Sassoon, and I'm an Australian-born Iraqi Jew. Come explore with us traditions that have traveled through many lands to our hands today.
The message you heard at the beginning was from Nelly Hayat of Los Angeles. Thank you so much, Nelly, for sending in your story about al-Banat from your family, past and present. Nelly is a leadership trainer, experienced designer, filmmaker, and storyteller dedicated to elevating Jewish women's voices and ancestral traditions. As you heard, she is intent on bringing this wonderful tradition from her childhood to women everywhere because she felt it's so important. We would love to hear from all of you and create an environment of sharing and openness, channeling the strength and power of our foremothers. So please send us your stories to ayunivoices@gmail.com. And now for the episode.
I'm really excited to do this one because Rosh Hodesh, we're talking about women, we're talking about the powers that women have and the family dynamics, and Rosh Hodesh just epitomizes this, and it goes all the way back to the ancient world. If you talk about in the Shulḥan Arukh, even it says that Rosh Hodesh, women are permitted to do work, but it's better not to. So it's a tradition, it's something. One of the things I loved is in the Cairo Genizah, one of the caveats in Cairo Genizah, I was just blown away by this. In some of the ketubas, it specifically says that, you know, the things that you're going to offer to the bride, and there are certain things that she has to have. And so she has to have a veil, she has to have the clothing, and she has to have money to go to the bathhouse. Now, we're not talking about a mikveh. We're talking about a bathhouse. She has to have an outlet for her social, to be social. She has to, one of the basic needs, one of the basic things is for women to be able to get together on Rosh Hodesh and to celebrate. So we're going to talk about also a specific Rosh Hodesh, but I just thought this is so the voices of our women that if we could just like go into one of those bathhouses and kind of listen in, that would be incredible. So we're going to try to recreate it a little bit here. So I'm going to hand it over.
Wow, when you speak about bathhouses, I just think about the hammams and how they really were social situations where women could go and they would cleanse, but they would also, the socialization was like networking as well. And the future mother-in-laws might be eyeing out like future brides-to-be, and there was a lot going on. So I didn't know much about Rosh Chodesh in terms of my Iraqi culture, so I asked around. I asked at my Iraqi group, and they said yes. When my neighbor Shulamit in Mosul, her mother would put on new clothes, and she'd light candles for Rosh Chodesh, and she'd serve special food, and she didn't do any work. It was a day where no work was done. So it really was a day of rest for the women. It was a festive day she couldn't explain why. So that's like an interesting thing for me to kind of try and understand. Like, so why is Rosh Chodesh special for the women? And I guess in a world where women weren't kind of given, okay, today's no laundry today. Like I always say that, one thing that's never going to stop is the dishes and the laundry. It's just not going to stop. So if you don't give yourself a break, no one else will give you a break. But here Rosh Chodesh comes and the women get a break. In a society where it's not so obvious they get a break. And this is pre-washing machines, pre-dishwashers. It's a big deal, and it feels like there's a glory and an honor given to women on this day. So it's something Iraqi Jewish women definitely kept. As you said, it stems all the way back from Talmudic time. The Shulḥan Arukh also speaks about it, as you say. So, and it's very much was alive. Are they keeping it these days? Not so much, but they definitely did it in Iraq.
Well, maybe because we have dishwashers and washing machines. I don't know. Maybe we don't need it as much, but I think there is value in the gathering of women that maybe we're missing nowadays. And maybe there is a place for it today, even if it's not to just stop work. We definitely are working. We're just working in different ways. We're working more outside the house. Like the bathhouse isn't the only time that we're leaving. So there is, I think, value to it. And I also wonder where it came from. There is, I don't remember where I read this, that the reason that the women were gifted Rosh Chodesh is because they didn't give over their gold to during the sin of the golden calf. And it's like, it's just interesting as a concept that this is related to women. And I was thinking maybe it just has to do with women are on a monthly cycle. So it makes sense that they're on a monthly cycle also for taking a break and thinking about how to be with other women and taking a moment for themselves. And so it really is a gift, and it was a gift. And maybe as we talk about the specific Rosh Hodesh that really was celebrated throughout North Africa as a special day for women, maybe we can think about how also it can be a gift for us today.
Right. That's beautiful. Also, what comes to mind is obviously in the Kabbalah, the moon is feminine, right? And it's the feminine energy, and women have always been very connected to the moon, and definitely with the menses and cycles. So it does make sense to just stop and honor feminine energy, which is something missing often in Judaism. And it's not, but it's always been there, and that maybe that's what we're also doing is uncovering it. As we speak about Middle Eastern Jewish women, they never lost it. They always had this honoring of the divine feminine, and one of the ways they did it was Rosh Chodesh. So I want to hear more about the special Rosh Chodesh for women.
So essentially, it's called al-Banat, which just means the festival for the women. And it's Rosh Hodesh Tevet, so it happens at the end of Hanukkah. And it was celebrated in North African communities. And it didn't necessarily mean the bathhouse, but it was just a moment for women to gather, just women, girls, all the generations, and to just be together. They sang songs, they would dance, they would bless each other, they would give gifts. And it was just a moment of womanhood in the cycle of the year, because it was once a year.
Yeah, and one of the things I love, it's really a celebration of specific women as well as women in general. And so some of the people that they would invite definitely had to do with Hanukkah. And so let's start with Hannah, the daughter of Matityahu, the Chashmonai, the Maccabee, whatever you want to call them. And one of the things that's just the power of women is the head of the enemy army wanted to have her as his wife. And what does it mean, have her as his wife? It means he takes her in front of everybody. Sometimes he would take her also sexually in front of everybody. And everybody's standing there. The Maccabees are standing there. They're not doing anything. She gets taken, and basically she's supposed to go now with the general. And she starts stripping in front of everybody, right? The whole place is here. She strips down to naked. And she said, really? You're going to let him do this to me? You're going to do this? And that's the impetus that the Maccabees needed to fight back and to revolt. So it's an interesting power, because there was no way she knew how to shoot a bow and arrow, and there was no way that she knew how to actually physically fight, I'm assuming. But she used what she had to make sure that her family would keep her honor. And so I think that's a very powerful thing of saying the power of women might be inside, but it's still very powerful. And then you have Judith, who in the Tunisian tradition was slayed Holofernes on this day. So there are some classical ones, like Dahlia was saying, that everybody celebrates, but then you bring in your own grandmother and your own aunt and your own sometimes daughter, who knows? And you really celebrate the history and the culture of it. So there's going to be music, there's going to be dancing, there's going to be candles, like you said. By the way, in Iraq, did you light Shabbat candles? Do you know?
I think it was like in the Chaya, we say it wrong. It's that glass bowl with the sesame oil, and it's classic. It's the classic way of lighting candles there. It's also how they lit their houses, lamps. So before electricity, obviously. So yeah, I guess that's the way they did light the extra candles. I know when my grandmother lit extra candles, and now I wonder, when I saw her lighting those extra candles, and it wasn't Shabbat, it wasn't for Shabbat. She'd often light Motzei Shabbat after Shabbat, but she'd also light other times. And I wonder if those times were actually Rosh Hodesh and I just didn't know. Could be. I know they also light. I walked into my neighbor's house the other day, and she had a candle, and she said she lit for her grandson who's having a procedure. So she lit to bring more light, to bring a blessing to her grandsons. The candles hold a lot of meaning, and they're not bound by, okay, just for Shabbat we light candles. No, they light candles as part of their power of bringing more light to the world, more blessings, more prayer. So the candle actually holds a lot for Iraqi women, at least, and I'm sure for all Middle Eastern women.
I love that. Well, and as far as we can see, the lighting of the candles is across, at least for Eid al-Banat, is across all Middle East and North Africa. That was a big thing there for those who celebrated it. One of the other things I actually love, I mean, there's music, there's dancing, there's singing, there's, whenever women get together, that's the way that they would convey their stories and songs, like we've said. But there are some communities that would also go to the synagogue. And think about women in synagogues. Often there's this disconnect, although in many North African communities, a big part of the older women's experience is being able to kiss the Torah. And so when they came to Israel or Montreal or anywhere in North Africa, and all of a sudden they're on a balcony, it was very disconcerting for them. So one of the things that they would do in Tunisia and the area is they would go to the synagogue, they would go to the Teba and kiss the Torah scrolls. And you just think about the Chacham would give them a blessing, and then they'd get together, probably kick out the Chacham, and have this all together.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. The Chacham is there and gives them a blessing in the synagogue, a whole group of women. I love how the boundaries that somehow have appeared in Judaism didn't quite exist before. And it really makes me, this is part of why we're doing this series, is to kind of unpack and uncover where we can create more flexibility and openness, at least in our knowledge and minds, if not in reality. And the idea of women getting together is always so powerful. And the fact that they came in, it wasn't like structured around like prayers or siddur or anything. It was very much their creative selves. There's something to be learned from, and to have an Eid al-Banat is really quite a wonderful celebration. If I was a boy, I'd be jealous.
Well, yeah, thinking of boys, I mean, the husbands had to be on board with this because they would be left at home. Maybe the daughters, depends how young they are, would be coming, but there would still be boys at home. So they would have to be part of this process in some way, which is also interesting to think about, especially when you think about traditional homes where the men maybe were not as associated with the home, and now all of a sudden they're the ones stuck at home and she's out, not out and about, but she's out of the home.
Not only the mom, but the grandmother as well. And it's
Right.
like all the generations, which means it really is on his shoulders. And he's left with the grandfather or whoever, all the male figures together. Maybe they're having their own party at night. But whatever it is a reversal, which is interesting. You're right. And that also, there's a wonderful kind of honor given to women in that reversal.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's also how we can maybe think about it today, in that there's, especially in spaces today where everything is mixed, and just to take that moment to bring 3-4 generations of women together has a power that we don't get to do every day. I mean, even if we have large family gatherings, there are different dynamics when you have men and women together and when you have just the women. And we know that we've discussed this, that the women have a certain wisdom that they can impart, and they get to impart some of it in the kitchen. But when you have generations all together of different families, even in one space, and just being together and celebrating together, different types of wisdom, different things come up, and also a power comes out of it. You feel empowered. And I think that's something that we can use today, even if we're not stuck at home and we're not always like in our domestic space. There's a power of women in the domestic space that we can bring outside.
I just want to clarify, when you say in the kitchen, you don't mean only cooking. You also mean that's where you would impart the knowledge. I just want to clarify that's where you would sing the songs. That's where you would talk about what's happening in their lives and how you can support them. And so I just want to make sure.
and asking for advice and talking about life. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And don't forget, what they cooked in the kitchen took hours. So
Yes.
they have hours to discuss everything. I think it's something that this idea of what there was a deep separation in the Middle East between men and women, and it wasn't always a bad thing. I think that's also a good point to make. Like, there was a dignity in the separation as well. Obviously, when it becomes like tyrannical and a shaming, a way of shaming a woman if she's around men, then it's a problem. But I don't think that's the way it was. I think there was a lot of interaction between men and women just in family spaces, but it was always around family, not around strange men. There were very strict boundaries, at least in Iraq. They really, really were. But the idea of all the families coming together, like you say, is so beautiful, because it's also a space where they're not cooking. They may have cooked before and brought their food with them, but they're enjoying the bounty of what they made together. And I'm sure they're discussing their different dishes. And maybe you can discuss what you made over here, Dalia.
Well, I did see that some Moroccan communities would make sphinge for Eid al-Banat, which has to do with Hanukkah. So this is my Yemenite version of sphinge, because I think every community has fried dough. So this is zarabia from the Yemenite community, and it's really just fried dough. There isn't much to it. I have both versions because I think when we're doing tradition, then we also like to adapt it to our lives and make sure that it's fitting. So I don't like too much oil. So I did make some with oil. And then when I ran out of oil, I let them fry without oil so that they're a little bit healthier. And yeah, that's my way of celebrating. Like we said, Eid al-Banat is on Hanukkah. So anything fried goes, right?
Right, of course. I can't wait to try it.
And I have to tell you that when the first time my father saw zalabia, which is from my husband's Yemenite family, he looked at it and he said, langosh. Because like Dalia said, there are fried dough in almost every community. And in Hungarian, so we put garlic on it in Hungary, garlic powder. And in Yemen, some people put honey on it, and some people will have it with more spicy things. But either way, it's a fried dough that's across. So there's always something there.
It smells delicious. I can just tell you now.
It is. Taste it. Taste it. Yeah, I love the idea that it's sponge. It's zalabia, it's langosh, it's women showing their kids, and it's also all often done with the leftover of preparing whatever bread you're making for Shabbat. So it's kind of the kids wait there for so maybe spinach is a little different because that's specifically made for Rosh Hodesh and for but this is just like we used to wait there for either my mother-in-law or my grandmother to finish making her challah or her kubana or whatever they were making, and then they'd give us some.
I have to say it's delicious. It's absolutely delicious. I think the fried version, the original one, must be the most delicious though, right?
Yeah.
In Iraq, they had zangula, but it wasn't specifically for Hanukkah, but it's also like a fried dough that they kind of circle into the frying pan so it comes out like a circle. And it's very sweet. They put this very heavy syrup on it. I haven't made it yet. I'm like, I feel like I have to be a bit brave.
Well,
So you'll have to do an Eid al-Banat and make it.
actually, I did see that it's even the name Zalabia is more also like Levant regional. I saw versions of it, but they're balls, and they're, like you said, full of sugar syrup. This, you said honey and spicy. When we were kids, my grandmother would give us pans of this, and we would just eat one after the other. There was nothing on it. Like, didn't feel the need to add anything.
It's delicious, just as it is. I would just, enjoy it.
So if we talk about making it a little more modern and bringing it into the modern era, one of the things I was reading, and in Libya, they would have a play about Judith that we were talking about before, the one who was actually a warrior, right? And they would have a play about her. So not necessarily only on Eid al-Banat, it was through Hanukkah, but it was very much connected to honoring women and the power of women on Hanukkah, which is interesting because usually you think about the Maccabees, you don't think about the women. And it became in North Africa and the Middle East more about women as well. And I think that's beautiful.
I think what's also interesting is, I mean, because maybe it's just evolved that way because we just prefer the story of the light, the menorah, and we forget it was a war. And it was a serious war. And going to the war now in Israel, one of the things I realized is soldiers, they were fighting for their homes. They were fighting for their mothers and their wives. And for the women soldiers, they were fighting for their fathers and some husbands even. Like, across the board, we have women and men soldiers here, but at the end of the day, the mothers were the ones holding up the army. So within every war, there are women behind the scenes holding up everyone, giving the reason for what they have to protect, building the homes which make it worth risking your life to protect. If you don't have a home to fight for, why fight? That's what occurred to me in this war, at least. And it's not a lesson I would like to learn. It's not a lesson I'd like to live, but it's something that made me realize that wars, especially wars of survival, require everyone. And it's not just the men with the guns in Israel, we also have the women with their guns, but it's the behind the scenes, all the civilian population, the mothers, keeping the homes safe and quiet, and quiet in the way that there's no conflict, that when the soldiers come home, it's a warm environment with fresh food where they feel held. And that's what holds a whole country, is the home. Those are some thoughts when you speak about women being celebrated on Hanukkah. They deserve to be celebrated.
Well, I think especially these women that are noted for Eid al-Banat, they're women that took part in the fighting. Like you said, they were warriors, but in the way that they were able to make their impact. So whether it's Hannah, who was in a position that she didn't want to be in, and she made a way out of it. And if it's even Esther that we're talking about, that's not connected to Hanukkah, but she didn't take a sword, but she was in this position, or she got herself into a position so that she could make an impact. But we still have Yehudit, who took the sword. She got into the position where she could take the sword by her womanly impact, and then made that final action of taking the sword. She seduced him and was able to get him into a position that he couldn't defend himself, and she could cut off his head. So we have women doing what they can do in the fight, and they were actually fighting, but through whatever powers they had in their hands.
So one of the things that evolved, if we're talking about also more modern customs, which I think we have to evolve the custom even today. Like you were saying, we have to do something to celebrate the women who are connected to the soldiers. We have to do something to celebrate today, and just coming together as a different generations. I think that's also something that's really missing today. But in Egypt and in other places, it started to spread. Eid al-Banat was often for anybody who had a bat mitzvah that year. So it's bringing in the next generation into the women's world, and the concept of taking that younger generation and it inaugurating them into the world of women is just a beautiful concept. Again, you don't have that many days celebrating women, although maybe Purim also. But it's Rosh Hodesh, you can take it and make it something beautiful. It doesn't have to be huge. It can be something small, but also Eid al-Banat can be a little bigger.
For sure. And if everyone brings their favorite dish and shares it around, it's a great talking point. And it could be an ancestral dish from their specific community that their family comes from. They could discuss and introduce, just like Dalia about the Salabia. And it's not so difficult to create a gathering. It can be done in your community. I could just see Rosh Hodesh Tevet, Eid al-Banat. I'm there. Just invite my family and friends, and they can bring their mothers and grandmothers. That would be a very special thing to do, this Eid al-Banat.
So I hope we've inspired you. I hope that you're going to share with us what you're doing, all of you listening to us.
Well, I just wanted to ask you, as a mother of 4 boys, what a gathering of women would mean to you.
Oh, that's so funny. That's true. I didn't think of that. Maybe I'd invite my son's girlfriend. I'm hoping and praying I have like some wonderful daughter-in-laws in future who I'll embrace as daughters and granddaughters, please God. It's an interesting point. I think when I gather people and friends and gather people who I form soul relationships with as sisters. So I feel like I've got so much female energy in my life, even though my house is completely male, even the dog is male. It's like not missing. Maybe I just bring so much feminine energy. I just don't even realize what's missing. But it's a great question.
So that's a challenge we have now.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's a point for people to think about, because you, like you said, you feel like you have the female energy.
I think it's also like, this is also a big challenge, I think, in Judaism for single people, for example, people who don't even have children. We're such a family-centered religion. It really is all around the family. And the pain of the foremothers is actually when they can't have children. And the point is, and this is something else that kind of was mentioned, is that women step into the roles they're called to do. They didn't ask for it. Yehudit did not ask to be put in that situation. Who would? Esther did not ask, and she says, I can't do it. And Mordechai says, well, if it's not you, someone else will do it. But at the end of the day, she understood she was placed as queen because she had to fulfill her role to save her people. So we don't really know what life gives to us, but we make the best of it. And my hope is that even with the lacks that people have, like it's painful to be single in the Jewish world when you don't have a family. I would hope you could also come to Eid al-Banat and be embraced as a daughter, as a mother, as a grandmother, because we're all related at the end of the day. We're all connected. And that kind of soulful relationship is what the Middle Eastern world taught me. My grandmother taught me. And I think that is the Jewish Middle Eastern way. It's welcoming, and it's not too stuck on role playing, in a sense. Even though we are so defined by our roles, we can also break through them and embrace what's different and what's sore as well, painful sometimes. that still come together and still create connection, which is all we really want. And that's what al-Banat's about, female connection and wisdom. So those are some thoughts that just came up.
Thank you. I think that's a wonderful way. Dalia, do you have one last thing to say before we close it out?
I'll build off the connection, the friendships. I think it's beyond family getting together. Like, it could be different generations from different families. And that's what I think the power of Rosh Hodesh and al-Banat is building connections with other women from other walks of life, from other times.
Thank you. I hope we inspired some people to go celebrate Rosh Hodesh, go celebrate Eid al-Banat, and celebrate the women in your lives.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. Ayuni, Voices of Our Jewish Grandmothers, is brought to you by Jewish Unity Through Diversity in partnership with Sarah Sassoon. Our executive directors are Drora Arusi, Sarah Sassoon, and Dalia Arusi Di Veroli. Our theme music is by Oshrat Chaim. Please rate and review this episode wherever you're listening to the podcast, and don't forget you can also watch on YouTube. And let us remind you that these stories live on when we share them. So please share your stories with us of women who held together families and communities throughout the ages in different lands. Email us at ayunivoices@gmail.com and we might feature your story on the next episode. Stay tuned.